Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and tonight on Hercules and the Space Gods, I'm proud to bring you our tribute to Tim Swartz. Greetings and welcome, Tim. How are you, sir?
Why, Hercules, thank you very much. It's a great honor to be on this show with you and everybody else that's going to join us tonight. So again, thank you.
Well, we have to thank you. For much of your life, you've spent your time writing and collecting tales that have stimulated our minds, that have titillated our imaginations, and have made us live in a bigger and more wonderful place.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. And it's maybe not necessarily my entire life, up until about third grade, I was pretty much a normal kid, and then it changed from there.
What happened there?
Well, it's and I'm sure that we've all heard people who are into this kind of stuff that we'll be talking about tonight, say that, oh yeah, ever since I was a little kid, I was interested in it. Well, I wasn't. Born and grew up in Indiana, so I was interested in, race cars and basketball, but one time I was assigned in third grade a newspaper headline about flying saucers. And around that time, there was like a UFO flap going on in the United States. And the teacher would, based on this kids' newspaper that Scholastic Books would send out. Yeah, they would send this newspaper out. It was an aggregate of the nation's headlines over that past week, and then the teacher would assign these headlines to various kids in the class to do an essay and then an oral report in front of the class. Well, like I said, I got assigned a story about flying saucers. And I was interested in outer space because, the whole Gemini and Apollo programs were going on around that time. But as for, flying saucers, I really had no real knowledge or interest. So I did my report. And then I was pegged as the kid who believes in little green men from Mars.
Oh dear.
And once kids find something, on you like that, I mean, they never forget it for like the rest of your school term, right up through high school. But what really got my interest was the fact that, when people are in a group, they'll make fun of you. But then later they'd come up to me individually and say, I don't really believe in this kind of stuff, but
Yes,
there's always a but.
Yeah. And then they'd proceed to tell me, an interesting story. Their family was on vacation and they saw a UFO, or, their dead grandma Matilda has been appearing at the foot of their bed for the past week. Stories like that. And that's really kind of what drew me in. The stories were interesting, but it was the fact that you have people who have these experiences, and a lot of people don't know what to do with that experience. Now, for those of us who have been interested in this kind of stuff for years, most of these stories don't sound that crazy. But, if you're somebody who has never really paid attention to this kind of stuff, and you have a weird experience, it kind of discombobulates your mind, so to speak, because we're all set up to have this filing system in our brain that goes and records all of our normal daily activities. You get up, you have your coffee, drive to work, come home, have supper, go to bed. That's, easily filed away. But say you're going to work one day and all of a sudden this UFO lands in front of you and these
Mhm.
little guys get out and pick up rocks and plants and get back in and fly away. How do you file that? How do you put that into your brain in your normal filing system and not the, oh my God, I'm insane filing system, which is what so many people think, that they've gone crazy. They can't tell anybody about their experience. Oh no, you can't tell anybody, or you can't tell your family members. They'll just, I mean, you'll be the brunt of jokes every Thanksgiving for the rest of your life. So for me, the fact that people were coming and telling me these stories, not expecting any kind of publicity, not looking for a buck, they just want to know that they're not crazy, that maybe other people have had the same kind of experience, and what I think was going on. And that's, to me, was really the thing that drew me in and got me interested in this, is that every day throughout this planet, people are having weird experiences that they have no idea what's going on. They have no idea that other people have had similar weird experiences. And so that has pretty much convinced me that the universe that we live in is weird, that the planet that we live on, there are constantly unexplained phenomena that we need to really study and research more, because this is stuff that's been going on with us, to us, from the very beginning, since we first crawled out of the cave and threw rocks at the moon. And that's really what I'm interested in, is these stories, why people are having these experiences. It'd be nice to find out, just exactly what these experiences are. But as you well know, I mean, people have been researching this stuff, for years and years, and probably no more closer than they were, 500 years ago. But I think it's worth our while. It's worth my while, at least, to continue researching this and trying to get a better handle of this wild, weird world that we live in.
That is a great and thoughtful answer. And I too have come to the conclusion that there's virtue in collecting the stories, because whether the stories are true or not, in objective reality, people react to them and it changes their life. And sometimes it changes the life of a lot of people, even an entire culture, over time. So it behooves us to learn these stories and to study them and to see what, if anything, can be found behind them. But even if nothing can be discerned, the fact that people tell the story means that the world is changing in some way. Where did you go from writing? How did you reemerge as a writer from third grade and start writing about stuff?
Well, from that point on, I started reading books. Of course, this was pre-internet days, so books and magazines were really about your only outlet. Later you had shows like In Search Of,
My favorite.
with Peter Graves or Leonard Nimoy.
Leonard
And
Nimoy, yeah.
and that was pretty much it. But when I was in college, I actually, because I had access to electric typewriters, I was able to write articles for various UFO and paranormal based magazines that were circulating at the time. Remember those?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. There's not. I don't think there's any left. 40 in Times maybe out of England. But here in the United States, they're really few and far between. Now you've got some really good e-publications now, like Phenomena magazine from Steve Mera out of the UK, which is really excellent. But I would write articles for some of these magazines, really just kind of to make some money to help pay my way through college, since that was myself and my parents had no idea how to get funding to pay my way. So I actually had to work my way through college. But then, once I started working in television, and I worked, as a journalist, as a videographer, producer, director. I mean, I did it all. My writing for publications kind of fell to the wayside, because when you're working in television, that is really a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week type of career. And plus, I hated typewriters. I'm not a bad typist. I mean, that was the one thing that I learned in high school, was how to type, and I think that was that's one of the major things that I've carried with me the rest of my life was how to type. But typewriters themselves, because I'm not a good speller and I make mistakes, and it was a pain to have to go back and try to edit this stuff later. It wasn't until the invention of word processors and then later, computers, that I was able to fire up my writing again to start producing, articles and things, and then later books. But it wasn't until the invention of computers, or at least home computers, that I decided to start up again. And then, of course, later I met Timothy Green Beckley, and we became partners in crime, and then continued from that point on.
So now we'll enter the post-Timothy Green Beckley chapter. Before we do, Nick Curto, panelist Nick Curto, an awesome individual. Do you have any questions to ask Tim about his pre-Tim Beckley days?
Hercules, how many hours do we have on this program?
Alas, we don't even have 1 hour, but try your best.
Because I will. Tim, you certainly have, you're the kind of guy that if I was going on a long plane trip, I would want you, sir, to be right beside me.
Oh, God.
And that is a real compliment, my friend. Real compliment.
Thank you.
I've got some things on the tip of my mind. I just want to run by you. I've been very much always interested in Admiral Byrd's amazing journey to the poles, and
Right.
If you could just give me a couple of comments on that, as far as was when he came back, was it totally hushed up? Is it to this day? I think it is. Just give me some rough ideas, please, of that particular story and what you think of it.
Well, with Admiral Byrd, the story had gotten out that when he was doing a flight over the North Pole in 1946, I think so it was, or early 1947, that he actually came into contact with UFOs that escorted him and his plane to an underground civilization. However, my research into that story, I discovered that rather than being over the North Pole at that time, he was actually part of what was called Operation High Jump, which was this vast military operation that came shortly after the end of World War II, which was really kind of odd because at that time, the Navy was basically mothballing a lot of ships. They didn't need them anymore, but instead they decided that they were going to do this massive operation to the South Pole, and got all these ships together: a submarine, an aircraft carrier, embedded cameramen and reporters, and went to Antarctica under the auspices of training the soldiers in harsh Arctic conditions in case the Soviet Union decided to invade America across the North Pole. which makes you wonder, the Arctic was a lot closer to North America than Antarctica. So why didn't they just send these guys, up to Greenland or Alaska even? But no, they went to Antarctica, and they were supposed to be there through most of the Arctic summer. But
Wow.
instead, after about 6 weeks, they got back together and left. And supposedly Byrd had a meeting with members of Congress and Senate, and reported that he was afraid, from what he observed there in Antarctica, that that the United States was in danger, as he called it, from enemy missiles coming over the Arctic regions and destroying America. Now, nobody really knows what he was talking about, because that was all that was leaked. And plus, the embedded reporters that were on along with this group reported on this as well. So it's still really a mystery, just what exactly happened to Byrd with Operation High Jump. I mean, there's all kinds of stories that they were there looking for like a secret Nazi base and Nazi flying saucers or things like that. But we really don't know what was going on. But obviously, whatever it was, they left quickly, and Byrd was obviously afraid of something.
Thank you, sir. That's one of the interests I have. Is there time for another question?
Yes, there's time for one more question. Then we need to know to our other panelists, set and have commit.
Okay, great. Tim, another one that I'd love to run past you.
Mhm.
Time travel, going back and going forward. My question is, if you had the means tonight to go back to a particular person or event, and also where would you want to go in the future, if there's any feeling about that? Could you give me that answer?
Well, I think that of the two, I'll say this first. Of the two, I think I would want to go into the future, just to see, what's going to happen. Yeah, it'd be very interesting to see, what happens to the human civilization in the far future. Now, going to the past, I think that I would like to, considering my interest in UFOs, to go back to maybe some of the historical events, like maybe Roswell, to see what actually happened there. Something along those lines. Because at this point, and I'll just use Roswell as an example again. I mean, we know that something unusual happened there, but it's been so long, and there's been so much disinformation and possible cover-ups that we really just don't know anymore. So it would be nice to have a clear picture of what actually happened.
Absolutely true. I think if I were to choose, it would be looking at Jesus as he was teaching. I'm very interested in that, very much so. And as far as Roswell goes, one of our members of Disclosure Network New York went there a few years ago, and it's a long story short, got a piece of material that they said was from the field. He took that to 3 top research groups, and they all said, this is incredibly unusual. We've never seen anything like that. These are top research groups, labs. And he brought it to one of my meetings in New York City, and we didn't tell the people at all what it was. I just said, there's something we'd like to have you take a look at, and we passed it around. We had a one woman who is a medium. She really has helped a lot of people answer questions. There was nowhere else to answer, and she touched it. And she stopped. There was this long pause, and she said, "Oh my God!" She said, "This is from a long ways away. It's absolutely phenomenal what I'm feeling." Now that was before we told her where it was from, so I just wanted to put that in there.
That's fascinating. I've often wondered if anybody has attempted anything like that before with suspected pieces from a UFO. So that's fascinating.
If you ever come to New York City, I'll introduce you to Tom, one of our members of Disclosure Network, and he will hand you that little piece and just you could see for yourself what it was like.
Oh, I would enjoy that. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Nick. And now, Setna Kamwast of Kemet. Do you have any questions for Tim?
Of course I do.
Hmm.
Okay, Tom,
Tim.
Tim. What happened to our memory? Tim, did you ever read the book Someone Else is on the Moon?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think that was Buzz Aldrin. I'm not sure, it was one of the astronauts that wrote it.
No, it wasn't Buzz Aldrin. I can't remember what the guy's
It's
name
not
was.
Neil Armstrong either.
No,
It's one of the
it
others, but it was
Yeah.
somebody that walked on the moon.
Hmm.
And I know that what they were saying was that rocks or something that looked like rocks were moving up craters rather than going down. And they saw that the craters were quite much deeper than they thought they were. And there seemed to be some kind of I'm going to call it a force field that prevented them from getting anywhere close to it. And he was also saying that they suppressed film footage in the news of things that were flying past the spaceship, that other spaceships were flying past them. And as they were coming into the Earth's atmosphere, they actually saw UFOs and were not allowed. Suddenly the camera would go black, or the news feeding would go black. And there was they were told not to say anything. And that's why he wrote this book later. And I wondered what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, there supposedly there was radio dialogue between Neil Armstrong and NASA, talking about Neil was saying that he could see like saucer-shaped objects on the nearby hillsides, and he commented that he felt like that they were being observed. Now, this there is a delay between communication between Mars and the Earth,
Of course.
as well as there is a delay between then if there are, say, like news media who are also listening into the same channel, because the channels were open for anybody to hear. However, the radio signals would first go to, I think it was Australia, and then Australia, because they had a big radio telescope there that was able to keep a good eye on the moon for the communications, and then the signal had to be sent from Australia to the United States. Well, in between that is where they could clamp down on the communications. And so after it reached Australia, if NASA decided that they didn't want anybody else to listen to this, they would switch the signal over to private channels, which they had several private channels. One of them was supposed to be only for the recording of say like the heartbeat and respiratory of the astronauts, but it could also be used for voice communication. So that's where probably a lot of this communication went to, and why the media never was able to get a hold of it, with the exception of some say like ham operators who were listening in and knew enough about the operations that they knew to keep these secret channels open. But as well, there's been a long history of people on Earth being able to observe with telescopes all kinds of bizarre activities on the moon, from bright flashes of light to what appears to be dome-shaped buildings and craters, bridges, things like that. And then again, you have the far side of the moon, which never faces the Earth in sunlight. All right, so it's always remained kind of a secret on any close observations. And then you had somebody like Ingo Swann, the remote viewer who wrote an entire book about his observations of certain locations on the far side of the moon, where he said that he observed buildings, dome-shaped buildings, along with what appeared to him to be human-looking beings working on the surface of the moon. But once he got a closer look, using his remote abilities, he could tell that even though they looked human, that they weren't, that they were extraterrestrials, and that he became aware that they were aware of his presence, and then he had to withdraw, his mind very quickly. He was later told by his handlers that it was a good thing that he did withdraw so quickly, because whatever these things were, they had the ability to track back to Earth
Yes.
and find out who was observing them.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, you've got all kinds of fascinating stories that obviously the moon is a lot more active than they're, telling us.
During
Okay.
Greco-Roman times, there was a few books written. Now they're calling them ancient science fiction. But these books talked about the denizens of the moon being at war with the denizens of the sun. And it talked about life on other planets in ancient Rome. So the awareness of life on other planets, including our moon, goes way back. And there's so much literature lost. Who knows how early it really went back?
The
Tim?
moon. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, one day we should sit down. I have been recorded very often with my own remote viewing talents, I'll say. There are things I know of that I can tell you about. I also do transmediumship with a guide whose name is Swartz, and he's able to go into past lives, and also things he says going into the past is easier, going into the future because it moves so quickly is difficult. But he's a very interesting character. I was tested at the Edgar Cayce Center in the late 70s for my remote viewing, my astral projection, and my transmediumship. And I think you'd find that interesting. The other thing is I was very good friends with the late Hans Holzer. And yeah, he was a very, very dear friend. I knew him for at least 30 years. I met him when I was at NASA Community College. And we went to the Amityville Horror, quote unquote, horror house. And we used some things. The energy there is normal energy. Those people wanted to do what they did. All I can say to them is that the DeFeo people, the guy that shot up his family, was stoned off his keister. And if he had any spirits, they were alcohol. But I wanted to ask you also, I've had experiences with an astral being. Her name is Vrel, F-V-R-L, all my life. But she came and I literally saw her in 1982. I was walking my mother's dog. They had moved to a development called Fisherman's Cove in Stuart, Florida. There was nothing there. It was a dried up swamp, and it had nothing. It was just, there was no noise. There was nothing. And the sky was literally black. And I saw what looked like a flying chandelier. It was a very strange, lights moving, twisting, very bright, glittery. And then it was gone. And this tall woman, and from what you described of the people from the moon, she had a kind of a transparent gray mask over her face. I could see her, but I couldn't see her. She had a cap on, and it was like Madonna. She had hair, kind of Barbara Eden, coming up from behind, and she was tall, and she had a gray, I'll say sparkly, or metallic-looking suit that went from her face to her feet. And I didn't speak with her, but she used telepathy. And because of my own psychic abilities, I was able to communicate with her. My dog was petrified. She hid behind me. She shook. She didn't dare bark. She was petrified of this thing. And I no sooner turned around to pick up the dog when Varel was gone. She just said to me, "We'll see each other again." But from that night on, for 2 or 3 years, there was a bright light in the sky. It's like a star, brighter than a star, that whenever I was walking was following me. And when I was a child, I was probably first 3 and then 6. I saw the chandelier object, and it was looking into my brother's window upstairs in our house in Uniondale. And when I got to live in the West Village, I looked out the window of the courtyard, and there it was again. And also when I moved to 81st and First, I saw it. And it was always just on the right side of my window, very high. I mean, just far enough where I could see it. But, it was as big as a plane, like a low flying plane. And it glittered and moved and twisted. And, you blink your eyes, it was gone. But it's been following me since I was a child. And I'm glad I got to speak to you about this because you're the expert. And I was hoping to tell you.
Did you have any other communications with her besides that one event?
Yes. Later in that year, I was alone. I wasn't with the dog, and I wanted to go back there. I thought maybe, maybe I was delusional. Maybe I was just scared that I imagined this thing. And in a clearing, looked like from E.T. gathering up, looked like moss or whatever she was gathering, was Rel. And 2 others, she said one's name was Fa, F-A-A, and the other one's name was T, T-I, or just T. And they were helping her gather plant material. She said, because this area will not be blank or fresh or new much longer. And she was right. Within about 3 years, they had made a development out of it. And she said it was destroying the natural order of things by building there. And she was very angry that they were going to do that.
When,
said,
I'm sorry.
Oh, she just said, you humans have to stop making the earth into a garbage pail. And she was sarcastic, but she meant it. She said, some of your writers say that you're stewards of the earth. She says, you're not doing a very good job in this wine cellar. And that was, that was the last I saw of her for 30 years now.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask if you ever had the chance to ask her why she picked you to communicate with. Because when people tell me, stories similar to yours, I always want to know, why did they come to you?
Well, I think she did because I do have some psychic abilities. And I'm able to, cute, funny short story, because we've got time cut. Can I do this, Hercules?
Sure.
Okay, real quickly.
People are still coming to Tim with their stories, so I expect.
Right here in good old New Jersey, there is an astrologer whose name is Joe Liccardo. Do you remember back in the 70s and the 80s, he had little scrolls at the supermarket checkout that were astrology, horoscopes and things?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Joe was the writer of all those things. Anyway, his friend Barry knew me, and I didn't know Joe from a hole in the wall. And he called me and he says, Michael, I hear you can find things. Because I'd also worked with some of the police forces in Florida as well as in Nassau County, finding things. Nassau County was laughing at me. When I found a kid, they weren't laughing anymore. And the kid was alive, but where you'd never expect her to be. Anyway, Joe lost Spooky, who was his cat. He says, I've looked all over the damn place and this cat's nowhere to be seen. I said, show me a picture of her. I pushed it. He came to the house. This is in the 80s. We didn't have cell phones. And I didn't have thousands of dollars for a computer. So he came to my apartment in Woodhaven, and he brought me the picture. And I touched it. I closed my eyes. I said, she's under a Volkswagen Bug, a kind of a dull yellow, lemon-colored Volkswagen Bug, which is on top of cinder blocks. And she's 5 blocks from your house. And she's sitting under the thing, cooling herself off. It was summer. He says, oh, come on. I said, the number of the house is 286, 289, excuse me. And Fair Lawn Avenue. He goes, oh, come on, Michael. They drove around, sure enough, Fair Lawn Avenue. There it is on the mailbox. And she's under the Volkswagen. And he says, how the hell did you know? And the people said, we knew she was a good cat because she was too well fed and very, very friendly. And she jumped into his arms. And the next time I saw Spooky was in person, and he introduced me to her. But that was kind of weird. But he had asked me other things about the past, the present, and future. And as he did that, I did get energy from other beings, shall we say. And I thought, you know something, one day I'll chronicle this. So we should talk at one time soon.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Yeah. Say I love stories like that, and your communication with the with the woman. We just put out a book not too long ago called Mimics the Others Among Us. And I mean, that is a great story with these kind of communications with human looking entities that, have identified themselves under various different identities, extraterrestrials, fairies, interdimensional travelers. Maybe there's no difference, but your story is just, I mean, it falls right into the same kind of grouping of other stories that I have heard and collected before. So thank you very much for telling me that.
I was all excited to talk to you about it because it's something that the non-scientific community, the non-spiritual community goes, Michael, what were you drinking?
Right. Oh,
No,
yeah.
It's real. And you can't tell, like my father would go, my father was a deist. He said, I'll believe in God when I'm there.
Sure.
And I'm pagan, and I know my gods and goddesses are around me all the time. So he was like, yeah, right. You're just like those Jews and the Christians and Muslims and Buddhists, and they all think that there's a God. And, well, if I see God, I'll know there's God. And I said, what do you mean you don't see him now? He's like, oh, Michael, grow up. My father was very black and white. He was very blunt. He's from Greenpoint, Brooklyn. His mother was a Polak. And my father's father, who was a wizard, by the way, was English. And they were quite a pair. She didn't speak much English. And I speak no Polish except foods. If you want kielbasa or gołąbki or halupki, then I can help you.
Yeah, see there, that's the international language right there, food.
Oh, don't you know? And I've got the pounds to prove it lately.
Well, I appreciate you telling me those stories, because I just, like I said at the beginning of the program, I mean, I live to hear, these kinds of stories, because
well, that's why I wanted to share, because I
Yeah.
know you do. And I was excited. I said, something, I wish I'd met this guy a long, long time ago. I read probably your stories and I was a Scholastic magazine and High Life magazine nut because I was a Boy Scout. And, we all got Scholastic and High Life and Boys Life free.
Yeah, well, I mean, after my incident in third grade, then a little bit later, one of the first UFO types of books that I bought for myself was a book called "Is Something Up There?" that was printed by Scholastic Books. And I may still have it somewhere. I mean, I've got a pretty good sized library at this point, much to my wife's chagrin, and it could very well still be in there somewhere.
At this point, I need to move the conversation on. This will have to be a two-parter, Tim. We'll have to honor you again because we're down to our last quarter hour. So post Tim Beckley. You did a lot of investigating and a lot of writing during that time. How was that period? How was that chapter in your life?
Well, I had mentioned that one of the first books that I bought for myself was called "Is Something Up There?" Well, then later, when I was a teenager, I bought a book from Gray Barker's publishing house. It was called Saucerin Press. And I got a book called, gosh, what was it? Like the Shaver Mystery and the Inner Earth Conspiracy, something along those lines. And it actually was Tim Beckley's first book that he wrote when he was an older teenager, and Gray Barker published it. But I mean, it wasn't until years later that I realized that was a Timothy Green Beckley book. So I mean, even as far back as that, you know, our orbits kind of cross. But you know, I met Tim Beckley the first time after I had done an interview with J. Allen Hynek when I was working in Dayton, Ohio. And I had interviewed him and then put the story up on the CBS News feed, which at that time was a satellite service that CBS provided for all the other CBS stations around the country. And then, you know, a station, if they wanted to, they could pull these stories down and run it on their own newscast. Well, Beckley must have seen that, because he actually tracked me down, called me up, and wanted to know if I could provide him a VHS copy of that story, which I did. And you know, I mean, we communicated mostly through writing, you know, a couple times through the years, but it wasn't until a number of years later, after I had moved to Indianapolis, that Beckley started a new magazine called UFO Universe. And once again, he managed to track me down. I don't know how he did, but he found me and wanted to know if I wanted to write some articles for his publication. And that's how that's how it started with us. You know, I wrote for UFO Universe, and then later Unexplained UFO Sightings, and the other magazines that he was producing at the time. And then he came to me and he said, you know, he goes, I've got a publishing company that I've kind of let languish a little bit due to all the work I've been doing with the magazines. So, you know, maybe we could start writing some new books and publishing for my global communications. And that's how we started doing the books. Again, I mean, we got to kind of rev that up. And for, gosh, almost 20 years, we did all kinds of different books, and that was one of the reasons that I think, you know, Beckley liked having me as one of his writers, because I was interested in everything. You know, ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, of course, what have you. As long as it was weird, bizarre, and unexplained, I had an interest in it. And always had research and notes and files about these things. And so, I mean, it was, it really became no problem for me if Beckley would come to me and say, you know, I want to do a book, say, like on time travel. I'd be like, okay, I've got a whole file here on different time travel stories, and that's how we worked, and it worked well all these years. You know, unfortunately, Tim passed away a couple of years ago, but you know, the time that we worked together, I will always cherish, because he really he taught me so much about how to do really good, you know, proper investigating on this subject, how to get people to talk at times when they were reluctant to talk. And then, of course, you know, I brought in what I knew, learned over the years on journalism and how to do the proper research for these kind of stories. So, I mean, we just worked so well together that it was really a pleasure and an honor to be able to work with him all those years.
And you were both very lucky to have found each other, and that enterprise flowered into many, many books and magazines and radio shows and so forth. We have a little bit of time, and I'd really like to pursue the history of Zontar Press.
Well, Zontar Press, you know, it actually started out as a way to, when I was still writing for Tim, and we were kind of learning how some of these do-it-yourself publishing companies were working, because before that, Tim had printers that would print his books up. I mean, like big printing houses. One of them was in Florida that he used. And of course, in those days, if you wanted to publish a book, you would have to have like, a couple of thousand published at a time. It wasn't just now with places like Amazon, with print on demand, it's a lot easier. And at that time, you had to publish a bunch, not knowing whether or not this title was going to sell or not. Fortunately, most of the books that we put together were good sellers. Some of them naturally, weren't. You can't hit a home run every time. But when we were learning how to work these new print on demand publications, I started Zontar Press basically as an experiment to see whether or not to see how it worked. So before we actually would submit some of these later books to, say, like at the time it was CreateSpace, and now it's KDP Press, I would put them together because I did, like, most of the formatting and things like that, and the cover design. I would put it up on Zontar Press, and then go, and you were able to look at it to see if, say, like the margins were right and everything was, hitting the right places. And that's really was the genesis of Zontar Press, was just as a jumping off point to see if the global communication books were formatted correctly. So then after Tim passed away, I decided that I wanted to keep the ball rolling. We had so many other great writers like yourself, Hercules, who were contributing to global communications. Yourself, Sean Castile, Scott Corrales, people like that. I wanted to keep us all together and keep us publishing books. Because just because Tim Beckley passed away, I know that he would want this stuff to continue being published, for this information to continue going out there for our readers, for to continue really to enlighten everyone on the latest developments on our favorite weird mysteries. So that's really how Zontar Press got the start. And right now we have basically two books that we have published. We published Alien Artifacts and now Mimics the Others Among Us. I have a couple of other titles, just more, again, kind of like experimentations. One of them, is like Flying Saucers and Outer Space coloring book that I published just on my own whim. And at one point I was teaching a small class with grade school kids on creative writing. And we took all of the stories that the kids wrote as the final project, and I put them all together and published them as a book under Zontar Press, and then each kid got a copy for themselves. Not anything that I would expect anybody ever on Amazon to order for themselves, but the kids got this pleasure of having their own published book, from their own writings. And so I hope to continue the process as long as I possibly can, and as long as I have excellent writers like yourself and others.
And didn't you publish also a book on Jeff the Talking Mongoose? I don't remember what the book was called, but I contributed to that. Was that a Zontar Press book, or was that? No,
that was still a part of Global Communication Inner Light Publications. That was one of, we're getting close to the end, unfortunately, of Tim Beckley's life. But no, that one was under still Beckley's publications.
I suspect you'll be hearing from Setna because he's a very good writer and he's had a lot of different experiences that he'll be relating. So hopefully, yeah, he'll be part of that journey as well. I'm honored. I didn't know I was in the only two metaphysical books that you guys published, but I'm greatly honored to be in them. And I hope to be contributing to them throughout whatever time I have left on the planet.
We're always we're always wanting to keep these books going. So I mean, right now we're kind of tossing around some ideas on our next one. Unfortunately, Tim Beckley, I don't think the guy ever slept. So I mean, he was working on 3 or 4 books at the same time.
Are you related to him, Hercules? It sounds like you.
Yeah, I don't sleep either, but no, unfortunately not. I heard of Tim first when I was in, he was publishing at that time hard to find occult books, like reprinting. And I knew he lived in New Brunswick, and my family was visiting family in New Brunswick. And at that stage of my life, I was with, I don't want to visit family. But when I heard it was in New Brunswick, I went, and then I went on a quest for to find Tim. I didn't find him, but according to Dory, I was within like a block and a half of where he was.
Yeah. At that point, I think he was living in his apartment in Manhattan, but he was using New Brunswick, which he was born and raised there, as his post office box.
Tim, you're an awesome individual, and you're an awesome guest for these type of shows. Anything that you'd like to promote? I would be honored to host an episode with whatever your latest book happens to be, and whichever one of your authors wishes to be on the podcast.
I'm sorry, Hercules. I didn't mean to step over you.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
No, our latest book, and it hasn't been out that long, is called Mimics: The Others Among Us. And myself and Sean Castile, yourself, Hercules, Scott Corrales, Paul Eno, and others have chapters in this book, and it deals with the phenomena of the human-looking entities that have been with us, humanity, probably since the very beginning of time, that have come to us under various guises, gods, angels, demons. Now that I think that some of them are appearing to us, claiming to be extraterrestrials. And we examine in this book all of these different stories and some possible theories on what these human-looking entities are. Do they look like us because they want to? Do they look like us because they are us? All kinds of different possibilities. Again, it's called Mimics: The Others Among Us, and it's available on Amazon.com.
And aside from the fact that I contributed to it, I recommend this book phenomenally highly. It is a phenomenal introduction to the whole phenomenon on beings that look like us but may not be us.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun writing this book, and I think for some of our authors, it really opened their eyes, to this whole idea. And I think it's the same way with a lot of readers, the response that I've been getting, because you hear these stories all the time, but I think that a lot of people have never really connected the dots, so to speak, because a lot of times they just seem to be separate encounters. And, we're looking to see if there could be like a unified field theory, so to speak.
And the book does a great job at doing that. How can people find the book, read the book, and hook up with all your other publishing efforts?
Well, probably the best way is, for that instant gratification is just to go to Amazon.com and just type in my name, Tim R. Swartz. And all the books that I've been involved with over the years will come tumbling out for your reading enjoyment. Most of them are available not only as print books, but ebooks as well. And especially our most recent 2, Alien Artifacts and the Mimics: The Others Among Us. They're definitely available both as print and ebooks.
Thank you very much, sir. Panelist Nick Curto, how can people enter your world?
My email direct is NICKNYNY1, and that's the numeral 1 @gmail.com. And if they want to know a question or have a comment, I'd welcome that. Disclosure Network New York now has the third Wednesday of each month throughout the year from 7:30 to 9, a Zoom where anybody is welcome to come in, and we discuss all the subjects that we really want to know about. The next one is going to be called Your Dreams and Interpretations, and that's so we did that subject matter before too, and there's so much more to it. We're going to do a part 2 now, so that's another thing they could do, and they could email me and I could give them information about Disclosure Network New York, now in our 23rd year.
Congratulations. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Setna Kamwast of Kemet. How can people enter?
Well, under my real name, Michael K. Waterman, on Facebook. You can get me at MK Waterman at iCloud. That's cloud, not clown, guys. iCloud.com. I have no humor. I know, Tim. I'm sorry. You can get me also on Facebook on Phone a Wizard, because I'm a wizard and you can phone me. I do my mediumship work and all of my tarot and past life regressions and spirit readings and what have you on Phone a Wizard. You can also get me at my home phone number, which is my work number, which is 516-650-3691. I've had that number, I don't know how long, but I came from Long Island and moved to glamorous, gorgeous Newark, New Jersey. And and I felt that I would not lose that. I had too many clients to change the number. So the Verizon keeps saying, Michael, you're on roaming. I'm like, well, I can't help it. I moved my house and my phone had to come with me.
Thank you very much. And thanks to our wonderful audience. I don't know which venue you'll find us on eventually, but we will be on M&M first. So until next time, everyone, joyous journeys and amazing adventures. This is Hercules Invictus from Mount Olympus, signing off.
Good night, everybody.